Hello, I am so excited to give you an update, my wonderful Patreon patrons, on the book that I've started working on, which is Orphan Pods. Um, Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, things have been very kind of tumultuous in my author and editing life, but um, I wanted to kind of do 2 months worth of updates together because October we had the book launch, and then November was kind of catch up from the book launch, and then December is launching into Orphan Pods. I have been working on Orphan Pods consistently since July because I got chosen for a course at the Faber Academy, and that allowed me to have that extra push to keep working on Orphan Pods versus putting it to the side because of other deadlines associated with Hirana's War launch. So I wanted to share with you just like a little bit of my process that only my Patreon patrons get access to. So I do a lot of sketching as part of the experience of trying to get to know my characters. So this is the Ministry of Welfare, and you can see the sketch is not really detailed. It's just enough that I'm able to identify, like from a bird's eye view, what is where, and also have consistency about where things are, because there's nothing worse than thinking something is somewhere when it's not. This is the factory that one of the characters, Idris, escapes from. So she's a textile slave. And so unfortunately, I don't know how much it allows you to see. I'm just going to pull back just a little bit. Unfortunately, the webcam, I don't know how much detail it's going to show you, but we'll get in just a little bit closer so you can just see some of that. And then another thing I do is like really deep character work. So I'll identify all of the different things that are part of that character's inner world: music, things they like to eat, type of clothing, but even deeper, like emotional things, like what state are they in emotionally as a result of their personal history. And I dive really deep into what their personal history is. So I have like a timeline that I've created that looks really messy, of course. So that's here, where I have like both Idris and Torif's timelines. And they're the two main characters that we're getting their point of view from. So I wanted to read to you a little excerpt from the work in progress, just to kind of give you an idea of where things are going. So I'll give you first off just kind of an overview. So if I was to talk to you about the book, I would say that it's about Orphan Pods is about two orphan teens desperate to escape the dangerous underworld of Zito City, and they must work together to save a family and find freedom for themselves. And then the larger information about the book is, on the planet Janus, in a desert city ravaged by civil war between Ungars and hybrids, two teens form an unlikely alliance. Ungars, unmodified humans and the losers of the Civil War, are the underclass of Zito City. Hybrids, often a mix of human and animal features, happily oppress all Ungars. Torif, an Ungar, must save his sisters from the very slavery Idris escaped from. Idris, a hybrid, knows firsthand the risks in trying to save anyone other than herself. She works long hours to someday escape the horrors of Zito City's underworld to live in the distant fringe territories with her Petruchian bird under fresh air on a small plot of land she can call her own. Toref frantically schemes to save the last of his family. Can the two find a way to freedom without losing their lives and endangering the innocent allies who have joined them? So now I'm going to read the first, just like the first page of the novel where it is right now. This will, of course, change, and it's also a revised draft, and so it hasn't been through as much revision as the books behind you. And this is like a prologue. Idris's secret, age 6. The war was never really over, not for us. Sure, the bombs had stopped dropping. You didn't hear flamethrower shells or the horrible grinding of hovers crashing midair. Instead of munitions assembly, half the complex had been converted to making cloth. There had been a mass exodus once the truce was drawn between the smooth-skinned Ungars and the scaled or furry hybrid workers. We had been left to rot in the Prylesu factory. I didn't know then if we hadn't taken our chance to leave with the others because there wasn't much out there for us, or if we were waiting for a little coin to get us as far into the fringe territories and away from the desert wastelands of Zito City. I'd sit at the edge of the hangar bay, looking out at the blue sky tinged with gray where the horizon and smokestacks met it, and thought anything could be better than this. Just a few weeks more when they pay us, Dad said to Mom, after almost 6 months had passed and still no coin to get us across the desert to the prairie. They're never going to pay us, Guyin. Can't you see that? She'd hiss back at him. This is no place for our daughter. When his health made it hard for him to stay upright for his entire shift, I lingered by Dad's side. I rubbed his back while he coughed blood into his sleeve and dabbed at the stain in his faded blue uniform with cold tea before Mother saw when she came back. I tucked the thin cotton blanket around his bony shoulders, only a few fur patches remaining on his neck. That night, I couldn't stop the coughing with warm red beetle broth soup. So we've got Idris, who is a factory slave in the Prylesu factory. And in January, I will have more for you to listen to. If you're curious about my process when I rewrite, I'm in a massive rewrite, and it's more of an idea draft because I wrote Orphan Pods, like 2 drafts of Orphan Pods as a part of being selected for a mentoring program in the UK. And so for all of 2016, 2017 school year, I started Orphan Pods and rewrote it with my mentor, and then I left it alone. So since then, all of the ideas have been percolating, and I've learned a lot from having 2 books published, and so now I'm ready to revisit it. So one thing I do is I go through all the chapters I currently have. Like I did a lot of revision of the early chapters because that was required in the course that I took. And then I go through and revise the rest of the chapters. And so I actually have to turn this in to a group of university students in Idaho. They're going to be working with me and one of my colleagues on the book as part of like a project in their class. And so I have to have everything revised for like kind of I don't know what we call it, not a copy edit, but like more of a developmental edit or just kind of beta reading. And so that means that all of those ideas need to be really fleshed out so that I'm ready for feedback. And so I have to do that by January the 31st. So I figured out, like you can see on this form, I figured out like how many chapters I need to do a day. I only take Sundays off. And so I'm only doing like a few a day. So it makes it easier that if I have to stop and figure something out or say, hey, I don't really like what I've built there, I'm able to do that. And so the last thing I want to show you is my massive binder that I use for Orphan Pods. And you can see several binders behind you on my shelf, and those are for almost all the books that I've worked on. I also put client projects in binders as well that are developmental edits because I tend to like to print the manuscripts out and write on them before I transfer it to the screen. And so you can kind of see inside the binder all the different little things, like I'll have feedback from people, different little bits and bobs, timelines. It's all kind of organized in there, and then the actual chapters that I'm working on. So it just kind of helps to keep everything in one place, because previously I would keep all these bits in those boxes you see down there, which is helpful for like little scraps and things that I want to put on my idea boards, but maybe that project isn't ready to go on the idea boards because I tend to only put 1 book at a time on those boards. Although there are 2 books on there right now, but that's because a while ago we had a filming of the book. So anyway, but thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I've really enjoyed hearing what you think about some of the different things that I've written. And I hope you enjoyed hearing just a little bit of Orphan Pods from Idris's perspective. next time I'll read from Taurus' perspective, and you can kind of get a sense of where the two of them are coming from. And then I'll share some more sketches that I have. So I hope you have a really Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. And if you have a friend who's interested in my writing who would also like to be a patron, feel free to send them over to my Patreon page. I would totally appreciate it. Thank you so much and Happy Christmas.